I mean, the economy is going to crash. That's why I wrote that book. The problem is the bailout ultimately is going to make the problem worse. The politicians have to, resist the temptation to do something because they've already done enough damage. And we have to remember, they caused this crisis. It was the most irresponsible monetary policy in U.S. history, together with the moral hazards of Freddie and Fannie, that allowed American citizens to borrow trillions of dollars and spend every penny. Now we can't pay the money back, and so the institutions that loaned all the money are naturally going broke. But we have to let the market function. We have to purge these malinvestments from our economy. If that means a lot of failures, a lot of bankruptcies, so be it. If the government tries to artificially prop it up, we're going to create a much bigger crisis down the line because they're going to destroy the value of our currency. And then we're going to have a real economic crisis that's going to make this look like a Sunday school picnic.
But Peter, what the government is saying, what Democrats and Republicans in Congress are saying, that if the government doesn't bail out these companies, the scale of this meltdown will be such that it will reverberate around the world. But there is no way, because the credit markets are frozen and the economy is going to come to a standstill.
Well, they're frozen because we've blown all the money on consumption. It's gone. The government doesn't have any money to solve the crisis. They can't bail anybody out. All they have is a printing press. So all we're going to do is take the losses off the books of the banks and stick them on the books of the federal government. But that's not going to change the fact that we've lost all this money. And it's not going to restore credit flowing. We can't borrow anymore. Americans can't borrow to buy cars anymore because we're broke. We can't even pay for the cars that we've already purchased. It's time for Americans to stop borrowing and stop spending and start saving again. We need to produce cars and export them. We can't borrow more money to send our kids to school. We need to let college tuitions come down so we can send people to school without borrowing all this money. And I think that...
Let me ask you about the alternative plan that is being circulated by House Republicans in the U.S. Congress, calling for those companies with the problems, with the toxic assets, to buy insurance from the government. Do you think that would work?
Well, no, I don't think the government should be in the business of selling insurance. This is not something that the government has the legal authority to do, and it shouldn't do it anyway. In times like this is when we really have to trust the free market, because only the market can sort this out. We need to let capitalism work. If we hadn't infected capitalism with all this government intervention, we never would have had the housing bubble. We would have had a more balanced economy. But, the mistakes that we made in the 1930s, the reason we had a Great Depression, and of course the Great Depression resulted from the bubble that the Federal Reserve blew up in the 1920s, and when it burst, all the politicians came to the rescue and tried to pass laws to ease the pain, and they ended up creating the Great Depression. The risk is that we do that again, only this time we create a hyperinflationary depression.
One final question. What do you think would happen globally if what you're saying, let the markets collapse, let the bad firms collapse, happens? Aren't you worried about what could happen?
Well, it's going to be bad. I mean, unfortunately, we've spent ourselves into bankruptcy. We need to rebalance our economy. It's going to be very painful. It's going to be more painful if the government intervenes with the process. But the rest of the world, I think, is in fine shape. I mean, the rest of the world is actually being hurt by their propping up our economy. I think once the rest of the world allows the dollar and our economy to collapse, I think they'll be better off. But we really have some serious changes to be made, both in monetary policy. We need to restore sound money. We need much higher interest rates. And we need to transform our economy back to one based on savings and production. We can't just keep borrowing money from the rest of the world and buying products we didn't make.